Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Oudi Abouchacra.
When I was 27 years old, I opened a chiropractic clinic in Toronto. In anticipation of my father's visit, I felt real pressure because Dad had an eye for what is essential and what is not. I obsessed over the details, the chairs, the plants, the treatment tables, the brochures. And this wasn't an ordinary visit because Dad was visiting his youngest, who at age 21 had cancer. And so there was a lot at stake here. Dad flew in from the UAE, long flight, beaming with energy. He said, "Son, I love what you've done with the place." I was like, "Thank you, Dad." He said, "But it's missing one thing." I was like, "What's that?" He said, "Patience. This place is empty." I had to come back. I said, "But Dad, hold on a second. Don't I need to be patient and give people time to find out about me?" He looked me dead in the eye, and with certainty and warmth, he said, "Son, that's your first mistake. You don't wait for people to find you. You get out there and you find them." Dad was right because days went by without me seeing a single patient. And my strategy of waiting for the phone to ring or a walk-in just wasn't working. Dad lost his father when he was really young, and so he often stressed the importance of building a solid reputation in the community by getting out there and networking. That's how he built his dream business in Lebanon. But what my dad didn't know was the very thing I needed was what I was most afraid of: networking, public speaking, and putting myself out there. I wasn't just uncomfortable, I was terrified. But I couldn't wait any longer. The bills were piling up, the credit cards were at the max, and my line of credit was at the limit. I was experiencing regular heartburn because my go-to when stressed was food. I don't know if you can relate, especially pizza. And I was popping antacids like there was no tomorrow, just to get through the day. I had many sleepless nights as I lay shaking and shivering in bed, in part because of the fear, but also because I turn off the heater in the winter to save bills, my bills. I was aware of the leaders who were out there, working the stage, on television, radio, and they inspired me. I had big dreams too. I wanted to run a bustling clinic. I wanted to rub shoulders with those at the cutting edge of my field and those at the cutting edge of personal development fields. And I even imagined being on the big screen with them one day. But who was I kidding? That felt so ridiculously and impossibly far away. I forced myself to network. And as I interacted with individuals from all walks of life, some leaders were, working for large corporations, others were small business owners like me. And many were getting results, but I also saw a lot of individuals were struggling like I was. And that's when I realized the only thing worse than not getting results is not knowing why. And you can relate. And, I was thinking, hold on a second. I got it all covered. I graduated. I'm qualified. I got the title to show for it. I got the DR. And then I met Adam, who I'll never forget while networking. He had extreme back pain, and he was concerned whether he'd need surgery. He said, "Oudi, would you mind looking at my MRI report? Will I ever be able to golf again or carry my daughter?" At that moment, I decided to sound smart and confident. I said, "Look, all I'd need is a 15-minute examination to figure this out." I didn't even look at the report. I offered no immediate value. Here he was in real pain, looking for some answers. I don't know, a sentence or two, hope. And there I was, looking to book an appointment. This is the problem with leading this way, is I often overlooked how I was being perceived. And that's when it hit me hard. Leadership is less about where you stand in your own eyes and almost everything about where you stand in the eyes of others. I'm not talking about self-awareness, which is important. I'm referring to relational awareness. How others experience you. The thoughts they walk away with. What they tell others about you. This set me on a 20-year adventure, a journey to understand a pattern I kept seeing everywhere. No matter your sector, no matter your industry, no matter your profession, despite culture, this is universal, I believe. There are 4 boxes you must tick in the minds of others before you can expect them to fully appreciate your leadership. I call them the 4C's. The first C is competence, which refers to people trusting that your expertise will deliver them results, right? It's human nature to gravitate towards those who excel because it's handy to have problem solvers around. Competence gets your foot in the door. With Adam, I knew I could help him. But he couldn't understand or appreciate how with my one-liner of a 15-minute exam. I failed to showcase my competence because I turned down his invitation to review his MRI report. It's as simple as that. Eventually I learned, and still learning. I began in the clinic offering free spinal care classes and offering free advice outside the clinic. I'd say things like, just because an MRI shows a disc problem doesn't always mean surgery. I'd offer practical tips like how to manage your emotions and mindset, with the mind-body connection playing such a big role. I'd offer tips about posture, what to avoid, what to do more of, all before they booked the first appointment. So much transforms when you take the time to demonstrate your know-how. Leadership is not how much you know. It's how others experience your competence. The second C is credibility. Unlike competence, which refers to trusting you on a professional level, credibility, I believe, is trusting you on a human level. You're credible when you're seen as having what I like to call a high value on human relationships. Competence gets your foot in the door. Credibility keeps you in the room. With Adam, I didn't have a high value on relationships. I had a high value on finance. Like many of my patients, I'm being transparent with you guys, I saw him as a number to pay the bills. I failed to really listen and capture the gravity of the situation and acknowledge his fear of never being able to golf again or carry his daughter. You know, with Adam, I didn't really listen because I had a strategy. But I eventually learned. And before I say that, let me just tell you that, can you imagine what was said about me if he mentioned that he ran into a chiropractor while networking? I eventually learned, still learning, of course, that listening was my priority. That became my top priority. Not to sell or upsell, but to upserve, to truly and deeply understand, to offer help, and if nothing else, to offer hope. So much transforms when we put relationships before revenue and people before profits. Leadership is not how much you intend to care. It's how others experience your credibility. Ready for the third C? Clarity. I'm sure you've met highly competent, credible individuals who are difficult to understand at times because they lack clarity. Clarity is about communicating in a way that others don't have to work so hard to really get. I used to make an absolute fool of myself while networking. I'd stand up and say, as chiropractors, we treat vertebral subluxation complex. It gets worse. Because by removing those interferences, we allow your central nervous system to function without any, function fully without any interference. Something like that. It was probably much worse. The look on your face is what summed up best by a friend of mine who said, Oudi, I think you lost him at hello. He's so right. Eventually I learned, and I made it a point when speaking to patients, coaching clients, and when delivering talks, to be as simple as possible. I'll never forget the high-level triathlete with scoliosis who said to me, you are the first person to explain my x-rays in a way that I finally get. Don't you love when it just clicks for people? So much transforms when we take the time to invest in the message, what we say, and the messenger, how we say it. Leadership is not how clear you are in your head. It's how others experience your clarity. The fourth C is connectivity, which refers to the number of relationships you have and how deep they go, the quality and the quantity of your network. It's human nature to want to associate with those who are well connected because relationships create access. They create opportunities. Competence gets your foot in the door. Credibility keeps you in the room. Clarity keeps the conversation flowing. And connectivity expands the relationship. I used to collect and hand out tons of business cards, which gave me a false sense of having a vast network. So when someone was looking to make a connection, I'd say, I know exactly who you need to meet. I'll make it happen. No problem. Too easy. I got this. Don't worry. And when I tried, crickets. No response is a response. I wasn't as well connected as I thought, and that was transparent to others too. I eventually learned, and still learning, I built, over time, a vast, rich network. And I created in my clinic something called the Wall of Fame, a curated list of my go-to business contacts in various fields. And I absolutely treasured being the connector and making those connections happen. So much transforms when you're perceived to be well connected in a room, in a company, or a community. And when you make connections actually happen for people. Leadership is not about how many people you know. It's how others experience your connectivity. My dad is no longer with me. But since his passing, I made one of the biggest decisions of my life. I moved right here to the UAE, which was his dying dream, because I reconnected with my family. While he's not here to witness the impact of his wisdom, I hope he'd be proud. I left everything behind in Toronto, except the lessons in leadership that all started with Dad. I had to adapt to a radically different world. I mean, look at you all. I had to pay particular attention to how others perceived my Canadian way of doing things and my broken Arabic. I eventually ran a bustling clinic, and my dream of being on the big screen isn't so far away. And when others ask how they can do it, I say lead with the 4C's, of course. But don't forget to flip the switch from self to other. The only thing better than getting results is knowing more precisely why things are working. And that comes down to embodying the 4C's. but also signaling them so effectively that others can't help but experience them. I used to believe, and maybe you do, that leadership is about the qualifications, the title. But standing in that empty clinic, I saw something deeper. Leadership is less about the stories playing in your mind about your competence and your credibility, your clarity and your connectivity, and more about the stories you inspire in the hearts and minds of others. I hope that some part of my journey has inspired you to take your leadership to the next level, for your sake, and for those who can't wait to see you shine. As you step in to your next interaction, I hope you ask yourself, what experience am I creating for others right now? And I'll end with this. At the core, leadership is less about where you stand in your own eyes, and almost everything about where you stand in the eyes of others. And when you begin to see leadership this way, your leadership lands. Thank you.